Hey, morning guys. Coming at you with some more graphs today. Got to go through a little terminology that our book uses on us. We got a vertical stretch and a vertical shrink, and we got to figure out the difference between those two for all of our functions on these graphs today. All right, let's look at some of these. All right, so to be a vertical stretch, this is what we've got to have for vertical stretch. You have to have a factor that's involved that's greater than 1. So let's have our normal parent graph, y equals x squared. It would be a parabola. But if there's a factor involved, say they put a 5 right in front of it that's multiplied in there, that changes your graph. This factor is a 5. It's greater than 1. That's what makes this a vertical stretch. So when you have to identify it, whether it's a shrink or a stretch, that's the way that it does it. So if you have an absolute value graph or just y equals x, if they put a number in front of it and multiply it in there, that changes your graph. And they say describe it, you say, oh, greater than 1, oh, greater than 1, greater than 1. This becomes a vertical stretch. Now the other one is called a shrink. So a vertical shrink will affect your graph differently. This time your factor is like a fraction. It has to be between 0 and 1. Make a fancy 1 there. So to be between 0 and 1 is a vertical shrink. So if you have your same parent graph, like y equals x squared, but this time there's a fraction sitting right in there. It's between 0 and 1. So if there's a fraction sitting there and they say describe the graph, is it a vertical stretch or is it a vertical shrink? The fraction makes it a vertical shrink. And same thing if you have like absolute value or y equals x. If it's between 0 and 1, it's a shrink. So maybe we have 2/3 x. So this is how you classify it. This is how you describe them on today's assignment when graph the parent function, graph the regular function, then describe vertical shrink or vertical stretch. All right, let's do some graphs. All right, number 7. Let's see what we got for a graph on number 7. Let's just do y equals x. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to graph the function and its parent function, which we can do. So there's just your parent function, y equals x. First graph, parent function, y equals x. Then we have to graph the new one, 1/4 x. This is kind of nice because this is just slope. Up 1 over 4. Rise up 1, run over 4. So we're good at slope. So if you look at that, you're going up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So there is your line, y equals 1/4 x. So what you're asked to do on this assignment is to graph the parent function, graph the new function, and then it says describe. So on the description, you've got to come up with whether it's a vertical stretch or a vertical shrink. 1/4, is it between 0 and 1 or is it greater than 1? Oh, it's a fraction that's between 0 and 1. So this makes it a shrink. So you got to do these 3 things. Graph the parent function, graph the function that they give you, and then just describe, is it a shrink or is it a stretch? All right, let's do a few more of these, make sure we've got it. Okay, so we did y equals x. Let's do, how about x squared? So let's put a factor in there, 3x squared, make it a little different. Okay. Parent function is x squared. It's a quadratic, which means it's a parabola. So that is one fine looking parabola. So there's my parent function, y equals x squared. But our function they gave us has a factor of 3x squared. So when we graph this one, oh, it stretches it. So your y equals 3x squared looks like this. So our job, graph the parent function, graph the function they gave you, and then you describe it. Is it a vertical shrink or is it a vertical stretch? But we look at it, that's a factor of 3 that's been multiplied in there. So multiplied by a factor of 3 makes this a vertical stretch. So, greater than 1, vertical stretch. All right, let's do a couple more. Oh, I know how they try to trick you. They put in a fraction. Oh, yeah. Okay, so they do try to be a little tricky. Let's say we've got g of x, and let's just do y equals x. But they give you 3/2 x. This is how they try to pull a fast one on you in the 3/2. So you see 3/2, and you say, oh, that looks like a fraction. But 3 divided by 2 is equal to 1.5, which is greater than 1. So this one is greater than 1. That's going to turn out to be a stretch. So they try to run a fast one on you to see if you're paying attention or not paying attention. All right, let's graph this real quick. All right, no problem on the parent function. Boom, 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 boom. It's just y equals x. Straight through there. One of our favorite graphs of all time, we graph this line, y equals x. When it's just y equals x, you can run a little slope for this. Up 3, right 2. So rise up 3, run over 2. So up 3, 1, 2, 3. Run over 2, 1, 2. And then you have your function. So we graphed the parent function, we graphed the function that they gave us, and then we got to decide vertical shrink or vertical stretch, but we know they tried to trick us. This is a stretch. Okay, so always check those fractions, make sure they're between 0 and 1. Okay, I'm saying one more and we got this. Let's do one more. Okay, last one for this run. We haven't done absolute value yet. Let's put a 1/5 right in front of our absolute value. So we've got to graph this function. We got to graph the parent function. We got to describe it. This is what we got to make happen. All right, parent function is just your absolute value of x. So you have this one, this one. So you got your absolute value graph, kind of that V formation. This is your parent function, absolute value of x. We have to run the 1/5 in there, and that definitely changes it. So this graph broadens it out this way, that way. So we have our two graphs. We've got parent function, and then we've got the factor of 1/5 that changes the way it looks. After you have both graphs on there, they say, hey, can you describe this? Is it a vertical shrink or is it a vertical stretch? With the 1/5 between 0 and 1, this one, shrink, is a vertical shrink. So, check parent graph, function that they give you to graph, describe it as a vertical shrink or vertical stretch. This is what we're looking at. So when you go to do this assignment on page 15, this should be helpful too. So again, I think this is page 15. I think it's 19 through 26, maybe something like that that you're going to have to knock out. All right, hope this video is helpful.